What if the demons King Solomon bound with iron rings and sacred names never vanished into smoke, but instead slipped into the hidden corridors of the human soul? Imagine a circle etched in the dust, the lines trembling as if alive. 72 sigils igniting in crimson fire, one after another, each a key, each a whisper. The grimoires call it Ars Goetia, the art of summoning. The catalog of princes, dukes, and kings of hell. But what if this book was never just about conjuring external entities? What if every name, every rank, every glyph is a mirror, reflecting not the monsters outside, but the shadow within? Picture the world as Solomon saw it, an empire of unseen voices, legions moving in silence, a court of infernal nobility as ordered as any throne of men. 72 spirits bound and catalogued, a government of the damned. But beneath the chains, beneath the seals, lies a deeper secret. These demons are not only predators lurking in ritual smoke, they are archetypes. Fragments of human hunger, rage, desire, and ambition. To summon them is not simply to open a gate, but to confront the chambers of one's own darkness. And so, the question rises like smoke. When you trace the sigil of a demon, are you calling an ancient entity, or awakening the part of yourself that has always been there? The terrifying possibility is that both are truths, that the Goetia is not merely an external key of power, but a forbidden mirror of the human condition. If Solomon's 72 never disappeared, then perhaps they have always been with us, whispering in dreams, echoing in obsessions, waiting for the moment when you finally dare to face your shadow. The Ars Goetia opens like a black doorway into a kingdom that mirrors our own, a meticulous architecture of infernal power laid out in the style of courts and empires. It is not chaos. It is not random terror. It is government, hierarchy, order, structure. At the center stands the image of King Solomon, the wise monarch, who, according to legend, commanded 72 spirits and bound them into a brass vessel sealed with the signet of God. What he contained was not merely a horde, but a parliament of darkness, a council whose structure reflects both the celestial hierarchy above and the human hierarchies below. To open the Goetia is to step into a mirror of authority inverted, where crowns gleam not with gold, but with fire, and thrones rise not on marble, but on smoke. The text describes a staggering system of ranks: kings who command legions of demons as if they were armies, dukes whose banners unfurl crimson and invisible winds, princes who whisper secret sciences, presidents who shape thought and perception. There are marquises and earls, viscounts and knights, each overseeing dozens of legions. The legion itself is not a handful but thousands, a flood of spirits answering to one name. The architecture of evil here is bureaucratic in its precision. 72 names, each tied to symbols, each with powers catalogued, each with duties and domains. It is a court as elaborate as any medieval monarchy, an empire of shadows perfectly ordered. Imagine this infernal kingdom as a palace of black stone stretching into endless corridors. In the Great Hall sit the four great kings Amaman, Korsan, Ziminyar, Gap, whose authority stretches to the four quarters of the world. Beneath them sit lesser monarchs, princes, dukes, and lords, each one both terrifying and necessary. Each demon has a seal, a sigil etched in lines that seem to move when gazed upon too long. These sigils are not decoration, but spiritual architecture, the very geometry by which each entity is defined and contained. To summon one without its seal is to knock upon a door without a key. To trace the sigil is to etch into reality the design of their being, like carving their throne into air. The very structure of the Goetia reveals something unsettling. Demons are organized like men. They gather in councils, march in order, respect rank and chain of command. This is no accident, it is reflection. Just as empires of earth arrange themselves in kings, ministers, armies, and courts, so too does the infernal realm. The architecture of evil is a distorted mirror of human civilization. And perhaps this is the most forbidden insight of the Goetia. The demons are not alien, but archetypal. Their kingdom not foreign, but parallel. Humanity looks into the abyss and sees its own reflection, magnified, distorted, crowned in fire. Solomon's act of binding the 72 can be seen as an attempt not only to control, but to catalog, to give order to what terrifies. He did not banish them into formlessness. He wrote their names, drew their seals, established their ranks. This was not annihilation, but architecture. To bind something is to define it. The Goetia becomes not merely a spellbook, but a map, a constitution of the infernal. It is, in essence, a grimoire of government. But why government? Why hierarchy? Because power requires structure. Chaos devours itself, but hierarchy endures. In giving demons, crowns, and chains of command, the Goetia reveals that evil itself sustains itself through order. There is an occult truth here. Power in any form, light or dark, is maintained by organization. Kings and dukes of hell reflect kings and dukes of earth. The architecture of evil is a commentary on the architecture of humanity. Imagine entering Solomon's temple at midnight. Torches flicker against walls carved with sigils. The vessel of brass lies sealed, but within, a court is murmuring. Demons stand in ranks, a parliament of shadows. The kings sit high, their crowns glinting with embers, their voices like earthquakes. Dukes kneel, reporting legions. Princes whisper in tongues that taste like metal and smoke. It is bureaucracy in its most terrifying form, order applied to the abyss. The architecture itself is ritual, a grand theater of power that mirrors heaven's own choirs and armies. And here lies the darker secret. Humanity has copied this structure. Our governments, militaries, corporations, all mirror the infernal blueprint. CEOs as kings, managers as dukes, workers as legions, symbols as seals, logos as sigils, contracts as summons. We have embodied Goetic architecture in flesh and stone, reproducing Solomon's catalog in every hierarchy we build. When you walk into a boardroom, you step into a shadow of the same geometry that defines the 72. The architecture of evil is not trapped in grimoires. It has become the skeleton of our world. But there is another layer. The demons are not only external rulers, they are internal archetypes. Each king, each duke, each legion represents aspects of the human psyche: ambition, lust, rage, obsession, cunning, despair. To bind them is to name them. To draw their seals is to map the soul's shadows. The architecture of evil is also the architecture of the unconscious. 72 names not only catalog spirits, but catalog the fractures of humanity. In this sense, Solomon's act was not political, but psychological. He wrote a guide to the shadow self, disguised as a book of magic. What does it mean, then, to read the Goetia today? It means entering a mirror maze. On one side, you see a demonic empire, perfectly ranked and terrifying in scope. On the other, you see human society structured in the same way, wearing the same masks. And deeper still, you glimpse your own soul, where 72 voices whisper beneath consciousness, demanding recognition.
Wow.
The architecture of evil is triple: cosmic, societal, psychological. The Goetia does not reveal demons alone. It reveals the way power works at every level of existence. Thus, the forbidden truth of the architecture of evil is unveiled. Demons are not chaotic monsters scattered across nightmare. They are organized, codified, enthroned. Their hierarchy mirrors heaven, reflects earth, and maps the human mind. To understand them is to understand power itself, its allure, its danger, its inevitability. For wherever there is throne and subject, symbol and seal, command and obedience, there the Goetic structure hums. It is as if Solomon did not create this order, but uncovered it, drew back the veil, and wrote the constitution of shadow. And the terrifying implication is this: the 72 are not locked away. They live in every system we build, every hierarchy we obey, every thought we repress. The architecture of evil is not elsewhere, it is here. The Ars Goetia is not a book of plain names, it is a codex of symbols. Every spirit is bound not only by title and rank, but by sigil, a strange glyph traced in sharp lines, and curves that feel as if they were not invented but discovered, etched into reality itself. These sigils are the secret alphabet of the shadow, the geometry of command, the occult architecture that makes the invisible visible. To engage the Goetia is not simply to read. It is to enter the language of symbols, a tongue older than words, a script carved in fear and fascination. Imagine the summoner's hand trembling as ink or blood scratches these lines upon parchment. Circles intersect, hooks curve, spirals repeat. To the untrained eye, they seem meaningless, but to the initiate, they are living signatures, spiritual fingerprints. A name spoken may drift away, but a sigil endures, anchoring presence into form. The Goetia understood this, that symbols hold where language dissipates. In this lies their power and their terror. The sigil functions as both key and prison. To trace it is to open the door, to encircle it is to confine the spirit within its lines. The symbol summons and restrains simultaneously, like a lock that is also a snare. The magician does not call a demon by shouting its name. He draws it, inscribes it, embeds it into space. The sigil becomes a mirror in which the spirit must appear. It is command written in geometry. The demon is compelled not by brute force, but by recognition its essence reflected back in symbol, leaving it no choice but to answer. But why these shapes? Why circles, jagged hooks, twisting lines? Here lies a deeper mystery. Symbols bypass reason. They do not appeal to intellect, but to unconscious. They strike the shadow self directly, resonating like chords plucked on hidden strings of the psyche. To stare long at a sigil is to feel it vibrate in mind and marrow, as if it has always been there, waiting to awaken. This is why modern brands echo the same principle. Corporate logos, flags, and crests function like secular sigils, condensed identities that bypass thought, searing themselves into memory. A swoosh, a golden arch, a flag of colors itch binds allegiance without argument, compels without words. The Goetia reveals what marketing only imitates. Symbols are spiritual technology, engines of unconscious power. The burning question emerges. Are these sigils maps of external entities, or projections of internal archetypes? Perhaps both. Carl Jung would have recognized them as gateways to the collective unconscious, archetypal patterns clothed in lines. To summon Baal with his sigil may be to awaken the archetype of domination within the psyche, the hunger for control. To inscribe Payman's seal is to stir the archetype of influence, persuasion, charisma. Each sigil is shorthand for a psychic force, condensed into geometry that resonates across cultures and epochs. The fact that they work whether in ritual chamber or unconscious mind proves their potency. Symbols in the Goetia are never isolated. They live within larger architecture, the magic circle, the triangle of manifestation, the divine names inscribed as barriers. Each line drawn on the floor is ritual language, sentences in geometry. The circle is not merely shape. It is shield, covenant, container. The triangle is not ornament. It is throne, focus, trap. Together with sigils, they form a grammar of the invisible, a liturgy in lines. To stand within the circle, facing the triangle, holding the sigil, is to inhabit a paragraph of sacred geometry, a sentence written in fire and smoke. Even the names of the spirits are symbols. To speak them aloud is not mere vibration, but invocation. Ancient tongues, Hebrew, Greek, Latin layer, meaning upon sound. To call upon Buer or Asmodeus is not only to pronounce a word, but to strike a chord, awaken resonance. Names themselves are sigils of sound. This is why grimoires insist on precise spelling, exact syllables. The wrong line, the wrong letter, the wrong tone breaks the circuit. The demon does not come, or worse, comes unbound. Language of symbols demands precision, because it is not metaphor but machinery. And yet symbols deceive. They are double-edged. They reveal truth and conceal it simultaneously. To obsess over sigil as ornament is to miss its function. To worship symbol is to lose sight of what it points toward. The true danger is mistaking the map for the territory, the glyph for the being, the sign for the reality. Many magicians fell into this trap, believing the sigil itself held the power, when in truth it was the channel. The symbol is not the demon, but the door. Still, symbols endure because they bypass death. Language changes, tongues vanish, but symbols persist. The seal of Baal is the same now as centuries ago. Circle is eternal. The pentagram still compels. These shapes outlive cultures, whispering their power into each new age. Modern occultists still draw them. Modern skeptics still fear them. Even in secular imagination, these symbols are charged, drawn on walls by rebels, etched in films to evoke fear. The language of symbols has left the grimoire and entered the bloodstream of culture. The forbidden insight is this: you are already surrounded by Goetic language, the emblems of nations, the crests of corporations. The icons glowing on your screens, these are the sigils of the modern age. They summon loyalty, demand attention, control behavior. You carry them on clothing, inscribe them on flesh as tattoos, worship them with time and money. What Solomon cataloged as 72 seals has multiplied into thousands, binding humanity in unconscious rituals. The demons may not appear in smoke, but their symbols shape our desires, our fears, our allegiances. Thus, the Goetia's language of symbols is not dead, but everywhere. To awaken is to see through it, to look at a logo and see a sigil, to recognize ritual and anthem, allegiance and icon, invocation and advertisement. The grimoire whispers. Symbols are never neutral. Every line is a spell, every seal a contract, every glyph a gate. Whether drawn in candlelit chambers or plastered on billboards, symbols summon power. The question is never whether they work, but to whom they bind you. The Goetia teaches by terror what modernity teaches by repetition. Symbols shape reality. To draw one is to open a gate. To live among them unconsciously is to be summoned without knowing. And to awaken is to learn their language, not to worship, not to fear, but to see. For in the end, symbols are mirrors. To trace a sigil is to trace the lines of your own shadow. To stare into its geometry is to confront the patterns already etched in your soul. The language of symbols does not lie, it reveals. The only question is whether you dare to read. Every invocation, every circle, every whispered name in the airs, Goetia, is hollow without offering. Knowledge does not flow freely. Power never arrives without cost. And the oldest, most primal cost has always been blood. It is the substance, both fragile and eternal, the currency that even kings and demons recognize. Blood carries life, memory, desire. It is time liquefied. In the realm of the Goetia, blood is not merely payment, it is language. It speaks in ways words cannot, and spirits listen. Imagine the summoner standing inside the chalk circle, candles flickering, sigils glowing faintly on parchment. The name of the spirit is called, the seal displayed, but nothing stirs until the cut is made. A single drop falls, dark against the floor, and suddenly the air changes. Smoke thickens, a hum begins. The unseen door creaks open. That droplet is not accident, is permission. The demon knows then that the summoner is serious, that the contract is written not in ink, but in essence. Historically, the Goetia rarely demanded explicit human sacrifice, yet the principle was the same. The magician might use the blood of animals, or even symbolic substitutes, wine, incense, offerings of value. But beneath the substitutions lies the truth. Something vital must be given. The archetype of blood echoes through scripture and myth alike. Cain and Abel, Israelite altars, the blood of Christ all testify that covenant requires sacrifice.
The Goetia is no different.
It demands proof of devotion, demonstration that the seeker will bleed for knowledge. Yet blood in this context is more than literal. It is metaphorical currency. To summon a spirit is to pay an obsession, to bleed hours of sleepless study, to sacrifice sanity on the altar of pursuit. Many who descended into the Goetia did not slit their veins, but they still hemorrhaged time, health, relationships, peace of mind. The demons may not have drunk their literal blood, but they drained their vitality drop by drop until nothing remained but obsession. The grimoires whisper of magicians who aged overnight, who withered under the strain, whose eyes burned with secrets too heavy to bear. This too is blood, the slow bleeding of soul. The terrifying truth is that every human already spends this currency. To work until exhaustion is to bleed ours. To crave ambition is to bleed peace. To chase forbidden knowledge is to bleed innocence. Blood is shed not only on altars, but in offices, factories, battlefields. The Goetia merely reveals what has always been true. Power demands sacrifice, and sacrifice is always blood in one form or another. In ritual imagery, blood also functions as seal. To sign a contract in blood is to anchor it beyond words, to fuse covenant with identity. Ink can be denied, but blood is undeniable. This is why so many legends of demonic pacts involve signatures in blood. The summoner writes his name in crimson, and the paper becomes unbreakable. It is not superstition, it is symbolism. The self has been offered, the essence pledged. The demon does not need the liquid itself. It requires the meaning of the act. I give of myself. My life is the parchment. There is also inversion here, where divine covenant uses blood to redeem. Goetic covenant uses blood to bind. Christ's blood declares freedom. Demonic contracts demand it to enslave. Both draw from the same ancient recognition that blood is sacred, ultimate, but they direct it differently. The divine pours his blood for liberation, while the demonic demands yours for servitude. To misunderstand this is to confuse covenant with contract, to think both altars the same when one frees and the other devours. Modern life, too, bleeds in hidden rituals. Think of the sleepless entrepreneur sacrificing health for empire, soldier spilling blood for nation, the addict pouring vitality into obsession. These are unconscious Goetic pacts summoning spirits without names but with the same hunger. Corporations demand your hours, your attention, your energy blood, disguised as productivity. The Goetia was never confined to parchment. It is replayed in every economy, every sacrifice of time for power. Its imagery is stark. Picture veins as rivers carrying offerings, every heartbeat another drop placed on altar of existence. When you give time to something, you bleed for it. When you obsess, you spill energy like sacrificial blood. The demons do not need chalices filled with red liquid. They need your devotion, your surrender, your willingness to pour yourself out. And this humanity does eagerly, even without circle or sigil. But the awakened magician sees clearly. He recognizes the cost and weighs it. He does not bleed unconsciously. He decides where his blood flows. To enter the Goetia knowingly is to face the truth. There is no power without price. The only choice is whether the blood will be wasted or consecrated. To awaken is to choose the altar divine covenant that redeems, or demonic contract that consumes. The forbidden truth is chilling, yet liberating. You are bleeding already. Every day, every night, the currency flows. The Goetia makes this visible, names it, sanctifies it in ritual. To pretend otherwise is blindness. To see it is terror, but also freedom. For once you see your blood as currency, you can decide how to spend it. And perhaps that is why Solomon bound the 72 not to eliminate them, but to remind humanity of the cost, to make explicit the price always paid in shadow. So the circle glows, the sigil burns, and the drop falls. Blood hisses on stone, and the veil parts. Whether literal or metaphorical, the offering is always the same. A piece of your life poured out into darkness. The Goetia records the exchange without judgment, but the choice is yours. Will your blood by chains, or will it by vision? Will you bleed for shadows, or consecrate your sacrifice for light? No kingdom, whether celestial or infernal, survives without agreements. Power does not float free. It is chained by contracts, shaped by covenants, bound by words and signatures that are older than parchment. The Ars Goetia makes this brutally clear. To summon is to bargain, and to bargain is to enter a pact. Demons do not arrive without terms, and those terms are never free. Picture the summoner again within the chalk circle, the sigil etched, the air trembling. The spirit manifests not as a friend, not as servant, but as negotiator. The summoner demands knowledge, influence, lust fulfilled, enemies destroyed. The demon listens, but always the unspoken law remains. What will you give in return? It may not demand blood at once, it may not declare price outright, but the ledger is already open. To ask is to owe. To receive is to be bound. The pact is struck, even if unspoken, and the chain tightens the moment desire leaves the mouth. In the lore of grimoires, many magicians believed themselves in control. Armed with divine names, they commanded spirits in the name of God. Yet beneath the ritual lies paradox. Who is truly master, and who servant? The magician believes he binds, but in truth he bargains. Every spirit waits for its due. Every pact carries clauses hidden in shadow. Demons do not grant without mark. The Goetia is a book of contracts disguised as catalog. a legal codex of the unseen. These contracts reveal a logic both terrifying and familiar. Each transaction follows the same pattern: request, offering, agreement, consequence. Ask for knowledge, offer devotion. Ask for power, offer sanity. Ask for love, offer time. In every case, the structure mirrors human law. To sign with blood is no different than inking a mortgage or oath. The sigil becomes signature, the circle a courtroom, the summoning a negotiation table. It is bureaucracy of the abyss, not so different from the bureaucracy of Earth. Modern life reflects this Goetic structure. Every employment contract trades hours of life for wage. Every loan trades years for money. Every treaty trades autonomy for safety. We imagine ourselves free, but society is stitched together by contracts as binding as any sigil. They may not glow in smoke, but they consume just the same. Demonic pacts are merely the mirror held up to human reality. The difference is only honesty. The demon admits its hunger. Our institutions disguise theirs. The most chilling aspect of these pacts is inversion. Divine covenant, as written in Scripture, is gift. God promises Abraham descendants as numerous as stars, demands only trust. Christ offers salvation, sealed in his own blood. These are covenants of grace. But demonic contracts invert this pattern. They are not based on trust but transaction, not on grace but debt. The eternal gives of himself, the infernal demands yourself. In covenant, God binds himself to humanity. In contract, demons bind humanity to themselves. The danger is not merely supernatural but psychological. For in making such a pact, the summoner externalizes inner shadow, projects desire outward. The demon becomes masked for ambition, hunger, obsession. When bargain is struck, the psyche itself fractures. One part gains what it craves, another pays in silence. To strike contract with shadow is to divide the self, to sell coherence for temporary gain. Many who summoned found themselves consumed, not by claws or fire, but by obsession turned to possession. The pact was never only with spirit outside, but with shadow within. And yet contracts can also liberate when recognized. To see every pact for what it is, to see the fine print is awakening. When you realize every request carries consequence, you can weigh the cost. The Goetia, in this sense, is brutally honest. It shows the hidden clause. Nothing is free. Every gift has price. Better to face this than live in illusion. The pact is dangerous, but ignorance is worse. Imagine the infernal courtroom. Black-robed princes sit at benches, parchment glowing with names, inked not in black but in crimson. Each signature is a soul who bargained. Each clause whispers, power granted. At cost, the echo of this courtroom resonates in our own. Judges in black robes, contracts in fine print, oaths sworn upon booksall are reflections of the same structure. The architecture of pact is universal. Demons did not invent it. They revealed it. So what is the forbidden truth? You are already bound. The contracts you sign, daily legal, social, psychological, echoes of Goetic pacts. They give time, energy, devotion for rewards you scarcely question. The circle of summoning is not confined to occult chambers. It is drawn around you in workplace, marketplace, even relationships. Every bargain you strike is ritual. The Goetia simply makes visible the invisible law that undergirds existence. Power is exchange, and every exchange is cost. To awaken is to recognize which pacts enslave and which liberate. Some contracts are cages, chaining the soul in cycles of debt and obsession. Others are covenants, binding in love and grace. The skill is discernment too. See the sigil beneath the signature, to recognize the demon beneath the deal. Many souls stumble not because they summon, but because they do not see. They think themselves free when they are bound, and bound when they are free. In the end, the Goetia's lesson is stark. Pacts are inevitable. To live is to bargain. To desire is to risk cost. The question is never will you make a pact, but with whom? Will your contracts be Saturnian cages, consuming your essence drop by drop? Or will your covenant be with the Eternal, who offers himself instead of demanding yourself? The choice is altar. The choice is signature. Picture the summoner once more. The sigil burns, the spirit appears, the bargain begins. Somewhere a hand trembles over parchment, quill dipped in blood. Whether in candlelit chamber or corporate boardroom, the act is the same. Desire reaching across abyss, agreement binding both sides. The pact is sealed, the contract lives, the price will be paid. Every grimoire teaches as much by what it conceals as by what it reveals, and the Ars Goetia is no exception. Beneath the lists of names, ranks, and sigils lies a more subtle and more dangerous teaching: the inversion of morality. For centuries, priests and scholars insisted that the 72 spirits were evil. They whispered only corruption and ruin. But what if the real danger is not their wickedness, but the way their very existence inverts the categories of good and evil themselves? Consider Solomon, said to be the wisest of kings, who nevertheless bound these spirits and set them to work. He did not annihilate them. He did not cast them into outer darkness. He cataloged them, compelled them, made them part of his temple's labor. If they were pure evil, why not destroy? The answer is unsettling, because they could not be destroyed. For they represent forces too deep, too archetypal, too woven into the human soul. The inverted moral code whispers here: what is branded evil may in truth be necessary, and what is exalted as good may be denial, repression, blindness. The Goetia is filled with spirits who grant knowledge, wealth, influence, charisma, lust, visions of the future. These are things human societies crave. Yet to ask for them through forbidden channels is condemned as sin. Why? Because to the structures of power, only sanctioned channels must exist. The Church insists that wisdom flows only through Scripture, that wealth comes only through labor, that influence must bow to authority. But the demons offer shortcuts, forbidden passages, shadowed knowledge. Thus the label evil is affixed, not because of the function itself, but because of its threat to established control. The inversion becomes clear. What liberates is condemned. What binds is sanctified. This is where the language of psychology pierces through. Carl Jung warned of the shadow, that part of the psyche which contains all repressed instincts, desires, and possibilities. To deny the shadow is to grant it control in hidden ways. The Goetia reads like a catalog of shadows: lust, ambition, vengeance, obsession. Each spirit is an archetype of what society forbids. To summon them is to confront shadow directly. Yet the inverted moral code of culture insists that such confrontation is sin. Better, they say, to repress, to deny. But repression only breeds possession. What is denied returns in distorted form, whispering in dreams, erupting in violence. The true evil is not in the archetype, but in denial of it. Thus, the inverted moral code cuts both ways. On one side, society demonizes natural forces' desire, ambition, rebellion, and projects them onto spirits. On the other, those who embrace demons without discernment invert morality entirely, glorifying destruction, cruelty, exploitation. The magician risks falling into either pit: repression that leads to unconscious possession, or indulgence that becomes enslavement. The Goetia sits between these extremes, forcing confrontation. It does not tell you what to call evil or good. It lays the sigils bare and demands you decide. This inversion is reflected in ritual itself. The summoner draws divine names around the circle Yahweh, Adonai, Elohim, to protect against demons. But then, within the same space, he inscribes the sigil, calls the name, commands the spirit. Here the paradox burns bright, using the holy to bind the unholy, invoking God to compel demons. Morality twists in the circle's geometry, good and evil interwoven in chalk and blood. A magician who thought himself righteous becomes a manipulator. The demon-branded evil becomes servant of the temple. Who, then, is truly inverted? Modern life repeats this inversion in subtler ways. Governments condemn corruption, yet traffic in hidden deals. Corporations preach ethics while exploiting shadows. Religions denounce demons but mirror their hierarchies, enthroning bishops as kings, binding legions of followers. Every system labels its own order as good and its rivals as evil, yet the structure, the architecture is the same. The Goetia unmasks this hypocrisy, showing that what one calls angel, another calls demon, and the line is drawn not in essence, but in allegiance. The inverted moral code thrives on such blindness. The most profound inversion is internal. When you confront a sigil, you confront yourself. The demon does not only arrive from outside, it rises from within. To see your ambition as Baal, your hunger as Asmodeus, your cunning as Paimon, is to realize the forbidden truth. The line between demon and self is illusion. Society insists these impulses are alien, dangerous, demonic, but they are you. To deny them is to fracture. To integrate them is to awaken, thus the moral code flips. What is condemned may be path to wholeness, and what is praised may be mask of fear. Of course, danger remains. To embrace demons without wisdom is to drown in shadow. To summon lust is to be consumed by it. To summon ambition is to be enslaved by greed. The inverted moral code teaches that both repression and indulgence destroy. The true path is confrontation, naming the shadow, binding it, integrating its power without surrendering. This is what Solomon's binding symbolizes. He did not worship. He did not annihilate. He bound, contained, ordered. In doing so, he inverted the inversion, turning chaos into structure, shadow into servant. The Goetia's forbidden brilliance is this. It forces you to step beyond simplistic morality. It demands you face the terrifying complexity that evil and good are not absolute categories, but flowing currents. Demons are not merely wicked, they are mirrors. Angels are not merely good, they too can enslave. The moral code is inverted. An awakening comes when you see through the inversion. Imagine the summoner before the mirror of black water, calls a name, and a face emerges half his, half demon's. He recoils, for the monster stares with his own eyes. Here lies the true test: to shatter the mirror or to gaze until recognition dawns. In that moment, morality itself twists. Evil is no longer out there, it is within. Good is no longer blind obedience, but conscious integration. The inverted moral code dissolves, leaving only choice. Thus, the Goetia is more than a grimoire. It is a mirror of inversion, a text that destabilizes categories, that reveals how thin the veil between demon and self truly is. To read it is to feel morality itself slip, to realize that chains and crowns can be exchanged, that shadow and self overlap. This is the terror and the gift. Inversion forces confrontation, and confrontation is the only path to wholeness. The forbidden truth, then simple and devastating. Demons are not evil because they are alien, but because we make them so by denial. Angels are not purely good, for they command, bind, and demand. The categories collapse, the code inverts. And in the ashes of inversion, you are left alone before your own shadow, compelled to choose whether to repress, indulge, or integrate. This is the moral crossroads, the place where the Goetia truly speaks. The circle is drawn, the sigil inscribed, the incantation whispered. To outsiders, this is ritual, an exotic and forbidden ceremony belonging only to dusty grimoires and torchlit chambers. But the forbidden truth is far more unsettling. Rituals are everywhere. The Ars Goetia does not simply reveal how magicians summon demons. It unmasks how all of humanity lives inside summoning circles, repeating gestures and chants that bind them to powers they do not see. In the grimoires, ritual is precise. The magician must fast, cleanse, recite divine names, draw the protective circle, place the triangle, display the seal. Every detail matters: timing, orientation, posture. The demon arrives not because of belief, but because ritual creates resonance. Ritual is spiritual technology, a set of repeated acts that open doors between worlds. Yet this logic is not confined to occult chambers. It pulses through society, woven into the fabric of daily life. Consider the courtroom. Black-robed figure ascends a raised platform. Others rise in silence. Oaths are sworn on sacred texts, words intoned with solemnity. The judge's gavel falls like a magician's wand, and destinies shift. This is ritual in every sense. Gestures repeated, symbols invoked, outcomes sealed. The Goetia teaches us to see it for what it is. Not mundane procedure, but a summoning of authority, a binding of lives through ceremonial act, or think of political rallies. Crowds chant slogans in unison, banners wave, leaders raise their hands as if blessing. The atmosphere hums, emotions swell, a presence larger than individuals takes form. Is this so different from a magician calling legions into smoke? Ritual summons not only spirits, but collective forces. The Goetia circles find their modern counterparts in stadiums. Raids, boardrooms, sunny-where repetition and symbol fuse to generate power. Even religion itself, which once condemned the Goetia, mirrors its mechanics. Processions of clergy, incense rising, chants intoned, these are rituals, summoning not demons, but divinity. Yet the structure is identical. Sacred space marked, sacred words recited, sacred presence invited. The difference lies not in mechanics, but in allegiance. One altar calls angels, another demons, but both function through ritual. The Goetia simply strips away the veil, showing the technology beneath devotion. But ritual is not confined to grand ceremonies. It invades the everyday. A worker punching a clock, the student reciting pledges, the consumer bowing before glowing screen saw, are participating in rituals. Each act is repeated, codified, given symbolic weight. Logos glow like sigils, brands summon allegiance, advertisements chant incantations of desire. The Goetia's Grim Circle is simply an exaggerated version of what happens each time you pledge loyalty to a symbol or surrender attention to a pattern. Imagine standing in a shopping mall at holiday season. Music repeats, lights blaze, crowds move in synchronized patterns, exchanging tokens of devotion wrapped in paper. Here too is ritual. Wealth sacrificed, objects consecrated, emotions bound to tradition. The magician of Goetia bleeds into parchment. The consumer bleeds into purchase. Both believe they are free. Both are summoned by forces unseen. At the heart of ritual lies repetition. What is repeated becomes powerful. This is why demons answer to sigils traced again and again, why prayers chanted daily engrave themselves on soul, why slogans drilled into masses shape thought. Repetition creates grooves in reality, channels through which energy flows. The Goetia codified this principle for spirits. Modern society applies it to markets, politics, faith. Rituals everywhere are engines of control, yet rituals also liberate when approached with awareness. A circle can be cage, but it can also be sanctuary. To kneel in prayer, to light candle with intention, to chant psalm with awareness. These are rituals that open, not bind. The difference is not form but consciousness. In the Goetia, the danger lies not in the ritual itself, but in unconsciousness of the cost. Likewise in life, most people perform rituals blindly, never asking what they summon. Awakening begins when you recognize the circle under your feet, the chant in your mouth, the sigil before your eyes. This is why mystics across ages reclaimed ritual. The Desert Fathers turned meals into sacraments, breath into prayer. Sufis spun and danced, their body circles echoing cosmic order. Buddhists chanted mantras, vibrating with syllables older than language. These were counter-rituals, designed not to enslave, but to liberate. The Goetia teaches that ritual cannot be escaped, can only be directed. You will always summon. The question is, whom do you call? The inversion of ritual is stark. Society mocks the occultist drawing circles, yet embraces the executive in suit, performing quarterly rituals of finance. It condemns the magician burning incense, yet sanctifies the priest burning it in cathedral. It fears the summoner chanting forbidden names, yet cheers the crowd chanting slogans in stadium. All are rituals. The only difference is label. The Goetia unmasks this hypocrisy, showing that humanity has always lived in circles of power, whether acknowledged or denied. So when you look at a sigil, see not only lines but mirrors. That glyph of Baal or Paimon is not stranger's language, his pattern you repeat unconsciously. Every time you obsess, every time you chant, every time you repeat a symbol, you summon. You are already magician, already summoner, already bound in rituals you cannot escape. The Goetia merely gives names to what you perform without knowing. The forbidden truth, then, is this. Rituals are everywhere, and you are already part of them. Every breath, every step, every repeated gesture summons forces, binds energies, shapes reality. The difference lies not in whether you ritualize, but in whether you awaken to ritual. To see your life as liturgy is to reclaim power. To deny is to be controlled by patterns you never chose. The Ars Goetia whispers across centuries. The circle is beneath you, the chant is in your mouth, the sigils glow all around. You are never outside ritual. The only question is whether you summon in shadow or in light, whether you bind yourself unconsciously or awaken to direct the right. For the terrifying secret is this: you are always summoning, always feeding, always bound. Ritual is not exception. Ritual is existence. Awakening to the system of the Goetia is like realizing the circle was never chalk on stone, but the world itself. At first, the text appears to be a catalog of demons, an old magician's manual filled with sigils and incantations. But with each page, with each seal, with each whispered name, another layer of reality is revealed. You are already inside the ritual. The architecture of evil is not distant, is the scaffolding of society, the pattern of your own mind, the shadow stitched into every gesture you make. The first crack of awakening comes when you notice repetition. You see a courtroom and recognize the black robes as ritual garments, the gavel as wand, the oath as incantation. You attend a political rally and hear the chants as spells, the banners as sigils, the crowd as summoned legion. You stare at a corporate logo and realize it is no different from the seal of Baal lines and curves designed to bypass thought and command allegiance. Awaken to the forbidden truth. The Goetia was never confined to parchment. It is a blueprint of the system you inhabit. Then you see the pacts. The magician's bargain with spirits echoes in every contract you sign. The hours you sell to employers, the attention you surrender to screens, the devotion you pledge to nations, all are pacts. You ask for wage, comfort, safety, and in return you bleed time, energy, life. The demon does not appear in smoke, but the transaction is the same. To awaken is to see that you are already negotiating, already summoned into contracts you did not write. Every signature drips with invisible blood. Every deal echoes the infernal courtroom. The Goetia unmasks these bargains, stripping away illusion. Awakening deepens when you look inward. At first, demons seem external foreign names, monstrous visages, legions from some abyss. But then you trace their traits back into yourself. Asmodeus is lust denied, Paimon is ambition suppressed, Baal is hunger for dominion buried under fear. Each sigil resonates not because the demon waits outside, but because it mirrors a force within. To awaken is to face this mirror without flinching, to acknowledge that the 72 are not strangers but shadows. They whisper because they are you. The real possession is repression. To deny them is to let them rule unseen. To name them is to bind them. This recognition is devastating. For centuries, society comforted itself with categories: angels above, demons below, men between. But awakening collapses the boundaries. See that angels and demons share the same architecture, one crowned in light, the other in shadow. Realize that morality has been inverted. What is condemned as demonic may be archetypal power, and what is praised as angelic may be blind obedience. Awakening is stepping into this paradox, refusing simple binaries, confronting the complexity that both light and shadow dwell within you. The next stage is awareness of ritual. Awakening shows you that every breath is liturgy, every action a rite. To scroll endlessly is to chant. To work hours for symbols of currency is to sacrifice. To repeat slogans is to summon. You realize you have been magician all along, but unconscious. The circle is your routine. The sigils are your brands. The chants are your habits. The system feeds because you repeat. Awakening is seeing the repetition, breaking its unconscious grip, choosing which rituals you will perform. But awakening is not escape, it is confrontation. The 72 do not vanish when named. They roar louder. To awaken is to step into the ritual knowingly, to confront the demons as fragments of self, to integrate without surrendering. Jung called this shadow integration. The Goetia calls it binding. Both mean the same. You do not destroy desire, rage, ambition, obsession. You face them, bind them, harness them. Solomon's brass vessel was never just legended, it is a metaphor for the psyche. A container for the shadows that once acknowledged can serve instead of enslave. The most terrifying awakening is this: you were the ritual all along. The circle is drawn by your choices, the pacts signed by your desires. the demons summoned by your silence. You are both summoner and summoned, both magician and spirit. The system is not outside you, it is you. Every time you repress a hunger, you create a demon. Every time you repeat a ritual unconsciously, you feed it. Every time you deny your shadow, you become its servant. The Goetia is not only a book of demons, but a mirror of humanity, revealing the forbidden truth that the infernal kingdom thrives not in abyss, but in our own minds. Awakening to the system means you can no longer plead ignorance. You see the sigils and logos, the rituals and ceremonies, the contracts in every exchange. You cannot unsee it. The chants of crowds, the robes of judges, the flags of nations are summoning rites, the whispers of lust, ambition, rage, despair within youth. These are goetic voices. Everything is ritual, everything is pact, everything is shadow. Now you know. So what do? Some recoil, returning to blindness. Some embrace demons, indulging shadow until consumed. But the awakened must walk a narrower path. Awareness without denial, confrontation without surrender. You bind the shadow, not destroy it. You break the contract, not by silence, but by refusal to pay unconsciously. You reclaim ritual, making each gesture deliberate, each word consecrated. You become Solomon in your own soul, naming the 72, sealing them, commanding them to serve instead of devour. This is the true forbidden knowledge. The Goetia is not manual of sorcery, but manual of awakening. It teaches the structure of the system so you can see it. It names the shadows so you can bind them. It exposes the contracts so you can choose. It reveals that demons are not monsters lurking in smoke, but mirrors of humanity's hidden self. To awaken is to read the grimoire, not as book of magic, but as mirror of existence. And once you awaken, nothing is the same. The courtroom becomes a temple, the marketplace a ritual, the logo a sigil, the chant a spell. You see demons everywhere, not because they have multiplied, but because you have finally recognized them. You cannot unsee, you cannot return. The Goetia has become not just book, but lens, and through it, the architecture of shadow is revealed. Awakening is not the end, it is the beginning of true confrontation. For now you know that the system was never external, the 72 were never gone. They live in you, in your world, in your rituals. You stand at the threshold with only one choice left. Will you bind them, or will you serve them? The seals glow, the whispers remain, and the circle never fades. The 72 are not gone, they breathe through your shadow, your hunger, your silence, or the ritual all along. Comment your thoughts, subscribe, and return for the next unveiling. We'll descend even deeper into forbidden fire.